just for the inlay, for the corner inlay, which is not technically an inlay, but we'll call it that, just run a gauge line to the right size, whatever size you've decided on. In this case it would be 3 millimeters, or actually just over probably, so you can finish at 3 mil. And there's no easy way for this if you're doing it by hand. It's not very complicated. I'm just going to clamp a piece of wood in the vise, let this run past 3 or 4 inches and just slide it along as I cut, like this. And I'm just using a fine tooth saw. It could be any saw really. So I'm just running that right to that gauge line, just on the waist side. And just keep inching it along. So I got 3 inches there, and I'll go another 3 inches here. The clamp just stops the wood from jumping back up and keeps it aligned. When you start working on the whitewood, inside here there'll be all the black from the ebony. Can you see? Not really, but all the black will contaminate the whitewood and impregnate the fibers with that black. So you'll have to make sure you clean the saw out before you switch over. And it's going to be the same for the inlaid dots for the tabs. We're going to cut those 1/2 inch wide. Oops. I'm almost there. Last little bit. That's basically it. So I cut very close to the line. What I'd do next is I would just put this on the surface of the wood. You could clamp this, but there's so little pressure usually, just to trim up the saw kerf a little bit. And then this one. Go carefully. And that's close enough, and I'll allow that. That's about as close as I need to. It's very close actually, it's right on the line. So that's my inlay piece. I glue that on the surface and plane it down when I'm finished having glued it. So for the thinner stock here, make sure, as I say, either use a separate saw or clean it out and stay with the white wood. This one, I would usually use this. This is going to be 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go just over 1/2 inch like that. I've got a little bit more to hold on to here. And this is softer. And I only need a couple of inches of this. No, 3 inches, something like that. Simple and effective. This is some old pallet wood that I found, and I'm just using it up because I just needed a contrasting wood really, something that was, this is birch I think. That's as simple as it gets. We're going to do these inlaid tabs here in a 1 in 7, just the same way you would for, say, a dovetail. So you could just use the dovetail template to get the angles on here, but usually you make your inlay piece and then cut round the inlay piece just in case there's a discrepancy. And you do want this to be accurate. So what I'm going to suggest is you make a temporary cutting angle into a piece of wood like this. So I'm lining this up on this line that I just did with my finger. Clamp it in the vise. I'm going to use the dovetail template. So that's a 1 in 7 pitch, just to get my angle. Come in here. And I'm going to use a superfine saw for cutting this. So this is a zoner, but any saw will work really. That's my angle, and this is my inlay piece. So I'm going to make the first angle here. And this then is going to be 1 1/4 inch long on here, like that. So what I'm going to do is put this, I flip this over, so I cut the one, now I flip it over and put that mark, let me show you, I put that mark right up against the saw curve cut in there. So I'm going to drop this back on here, but before I do any cut, I'm going to make a pass with my knife here, right on the end of here, so I know exactly where to put the next stop mark for my second piece. So there is my inlay piece. But now I'm going to flip this over and cut the second, just slide it right up to that knife point. Oops. Wrong one. Do exactly the same, and I'm going to do 3 or 4 while I'm here, because I've actually got a couple of these on the go. So these should be exactly the same size, but I'll be marking them individually and inlaying them individually. So I've got 4, and then I'll just do a spare. So those will be exactly the same. I can't imagine they will be more than a very small fraction, even a thou out. So those are all the same size. Okay, so set this aside and set this aside. Now I'm going to lay out for my inlay on here. So I'm going to put it in the vise just to give me a solid start. We're going to come in 1 1/2 inches from each end here. So I'm going to use the pencil on here. And then I go with this tab and I put this on, and I'm just flushing this to that top edge. And then I'm going to draw around it with my knife. And I'm going to go very lightly. Very lightly. The nice thing about wood on wood is it usually doesn't slip, as in this case. It feels very solid. So this is my bottom edge here. Okay, I'm going to mark this just temporarily. That's A to A, and the same on this one. So I'm leaving it actually just a hair above that edge. Not too much pressure on there, because it's going to put the bruising on the good wood and not on the other. So now I can go in here and I can just pull this and try and put the bruising on the waste wood, which is this bit here. So I've got to have a depth now, so I'm going to set the gauge to where this will be just protruding slightly. So I'm going a little bit less, or a little bit shallower than the actual physical depth of this inlay piece. And this goes in between here and here. So go right carefully, not to overshoot. That's that. On the bench top, this is where I'm going to go with a slightly smaller chisel. I've got to be careful not to strike too hard here, because I'll move that gauge line, that knife wall. And if you want to be absolutely certain, it's almost like you're pulling the chisel away from pressing against the knife wall. This time we can go smaller chisel right up against that back knife wall. Just like a hinged recess, no different. So I've got a nice clean line here. Right on that inside corner. It's a little bit more awkward here. I'm going to do this way. Normally I wouldn't, but this will just be so you can see what I'm shooting for here. So I'm going to right in between here. I still have to go a little bit deeper on my perpendicular cut at the end of each of these dovetailed ends yet. So I'm just taking out a little bit more like this, just to pare down. Back on the bench top. There. Looking good. So what I might do now, because I know I'm to depth, is angle this in the vise and then bring the router in and put that right in just carefully to get the depth. So this just guarantees the exact depth. It's not an absolute essential tool for this. You can go straight with your chisel. You don't have to have that router for that, really. I would hate to think you would go out and buy a router just to do that. Okay. So I'm just cleaning up that inside corner now. And this should just pop right in there. And it does. It's still not fully to depth yet. I'm going to go a little bit deeper because I can still see my gauge line. Just a little bit. There we go. So I'm just pivoting with my right hand. my stronger hand, and then I'm holding that to the surface of the wood and I'm working across. In with my chisel, just to clean up the corners where I can't get with the router. Let's see how this goes in now. So that glues in there, and we've got one inlay done. Now we'll do the other one. This is past the surface, which is just fine. That's exactly what I want. I've left it just shallow enough, and that will work. So we'll do this other one. Let me turn this around and see if you can see a little bit more if I turn it this way. So I've got my, can you see the gauge line there? There's my physical gauge line. That's how deep I'm going to go. So, and I'm right here. There's my knife wall, and I'm actually going on my knife wall, but I'm not going to hit this very hard, just as lightly as that, because otherwise I'll compress the fibres and I'll move that knife wall and my inlay won't be snug. So watch what happens here. I'm going to go a little bit deeper now into the knife wall. Just ease that corner out. Same on this one here. So I press, what I do is I put my chisel down and I make sure the whole of the edge is engaged with the surface of the wood, and then I push forward, and that guarantees. Can you see what we've got there? Nice crisp clean lines. They look crisp to me. So now I'm going to go a little bit deeper with this. So right on my knife wall. That gives me the crisp internal corner that I've been looking for. And it also gets me right to the depth. I'm dead on the depth that I want. So now, bevel down, just exactly the same as you would for a hinge recess. And just move across incrementally, about 3 millimeters apart with each one. I'm exactly on my knife wall along here as well, no margin. That flicks, and what I'm going to do is I go back to my router. I did this inlay. I'm going to turn this. I'm going to just lift this up, and I'm going to use the router here. Keep going down. Angle this just a little bit more. So I hope you can see. So now I'm just pivoting, swiveling, whatever I can to get the optimum cut, just using the very corner of that bit to get as tight as I can to my depth. Then here, I'll go with a wider chisel this time. So I'm right on my knife wall along the long grain. And I'm still off my line. Can you see I'm a millimeter off that depth line? So I'm going to go back in one more time, just with the router, no more stop cuts. So I slacken off, turn it half a turn, and that looks like it's about right. And I go down into the face, and I'm pretty good on my depth of the knife wall. See how I'm sliding that? I'm trying to get the optimum cut. That is this one. Just a little, oh, that's perfect. So there, I've got my 2 inlays done. Everything's lining up nicely, so I just need to glue those in place now. Wish that one hadn't been quite so tight, because now I have to get it out. Oh, that's great. 1, 2, a little bit of glue. Just pull that, make sure it goes on all the walls, like that, and then on here. And we'll leave that for half an hour. And then we'll plane it down and revisit the other one too. So that's that. So we're going to clean up the ends, the faces of all our inlays and everything. What would I do first? Would I do the edge first? This needs to be dead straight. Continuous shaving all the way through. A little bit of glue there. I'm going against the grain on the black ebony there. So I'm going to try turning it round, and hopefully I won't be going against the grain with the mahogany. I'm fine. So I want to check this here for exactness. First I want to check that I'm straight down the bottom. That seems to have a slight round in it. So a shallow setting. And if you've got a longer plane, like I do, you may want to use that just to guarantee not far off. So now I've got a registration face. I want to check my parallel. 33. Ooh, 33.32. 32.90. 33. Wow, that's pretty close. Ooh, that is so close. 33.62 and 33.52. That's close enough for an Englishman. So I'm straight every other way. I just want to do this face now then. And then I'm going to make the other one to match this one. This is where it gets a little bit awkward to get this in the vise because you don't have much of a surface registering in the jaws of the vise. So I'm taking a skim across here first. I just want to feel whether I'm with the grain or against the grain. This is feeling pretty good. I'm going against the grain on this bottom edge, but not very much, so the bulk of the grain is running just fine. So I'm looking here. Happy with that. I'm just softening these edges because they probably would break off if I didn't. So they're nice, crisp, clean lines. That's that one. I might just file the end of this just a little bit, just to clean it up, make sure it feels nice. Ooh, that sounds no. That would not be nice, would it? As low as I can get it, but just to flush the inlay and make sure it feels smooth. Looks good, and then just to file the corners. And this one, exactly the same. This is where I want to get this one the exact same. So I'm going to put these two here, bring this one in here. I want to get these so they're identical in height. So I've got just the same shaving to take off this one. Check the underside, make sure that's straight. It is. I'm just going to take one pass with the plane, the long plane, just to make sure I feel happy about it. Yeah. I always say I'm going to take one and then take two. So this goes on here just a little bit. So this one actually, where's my caliper there? 33.38. That is so close. Just keep going until you get clear shaving. Not quite down to depth there. This is flush here, it's perfect at this end. feels so nice. That won't work. Just need another 2 or 3 shavings here. Try a little bit more. There it is, that's the one. Surface this face and then we're done. This looks so nice, this surface. Oh, that looks so nice. So these go here. Those are my winding sticks. Those will just need a coat of shellac now. So I've taken all the edges. I haven't sanded it yet, so I'm just going to give this a very light sanding. You've got to be careful with the black ebony. This will be fine in this case, but the black ebony will contaminate lighter woods. If you used a light wood like say maple, I probably would advise you to go straight off the plane and then go with a coat of shellac. That's that one. This one here, see the contamination in here, that will definitely discolor that lighter wood, so I'm going to go with a... Even the mahogany will contaminate it, so like it did there actually. But I'm happy enough with this. It's going to be fine. If I didn't want it to, I would have just not sanded it. But I could scrape that if it bothered me, but it doesn't. So, coat of shellac. I love the way the black just pops off when you put the shellac on. Three coats, yeah, give it 10 minutes between coats. That's really all you need for shellac, really. I'm going to just touch the underside and leave it. You don't have to be too worried about shellac. It goes on easy and it sands very easily. And if you do get any finger marks in it, you can just buff them out very easily. Just the ends. and that top edge. See a couple of spots of glue I need to just sand out. Make sure you catch any wet ends, any drips. So I've got some winding sticks now to make sure my boards are no longer twisted. Oop. Not what you want, really. Winding sticks just last, they never wear out. There's nothing to wear on them, really. You may have to check them after, give these a couple of weeks and see how, make sure with stress release from planing them and sawing them, you don't have any issues. So we'll come back, I'll do another couple of coats just the same way. Sand in between with 240 grit, 250 grit, something like that. And that is my winding sticks. Oh, they are my winding sticks finished. Thank you for watching. We've got the winding sticks finished. I've put some finish on them and now they feel good in my hand. I just wanted to take a few seconds just on this piece of oak to see them in action, and this actually should be twisted, I think. Yeah, we've got a twist in there. So what we do, you can see this point is high on this side and this point is high on this side. Something's out, so we can check that with a square like this, run the square on here, and you can see, I hope, that this is rocking, and it may be doing the same down here. Actually, this one is square, so we're fine on this end. So we need to work on this end, take this twist out of this side here. So I start on the high spot and try and elongate my stroke to the square end down here, and I should be closer than I was at the beginning. So the dot goes in the middle. See how it balances on there nicely. Centered again. And now I'm still high, a little bit high on this corner here. So that should reflect in the square. So let me see. And it does, just a little bit, about a quarter of the distance that I was out of square before. Little bit of rock. So I take this. Now you might be asking yourself, well, why are we using the winding stick? Well, often a board may be crooked or cupped or something like that, and you can't use the square until you've established this first straight edge that's wind free. There we go. We have no twisting now. We're completely zero tolerance to twist. And now you see how they work. That's how winding sticks work, and that's a lifetime pair for no matter how old or how young you are. Those will last a lifetime.